So, what's the deal with America's relationship with Europe going forward? To figure that out, we're going to dive into two really important speeches, one from President Trump at Davos, and the other from Vice President Vance in Munich. We want to see if they're actually singing from the same song sheet and what that could mean for one of America's oldest alliances.
Okay, so at first glance, these two sound like they're on totally different planets, right? President Trump is all about material strength, saying, we want strong allies, not seriously weakened ones. But then you have Vice President Vance, and he's looking inward, at values, warning Europe, if you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. So are these two separate ideas? Or are they just two sides of the same coin? Let's dig in.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First up, we'll look at how they see Europe's problems. Then, what's their solution, their prescription? After that, we'll get into a really interesting case study, Greenland, where you'll see these two worldviews meet. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together and ask, what does this new transatlantic bargain actually look like? So the one thing both readers absolutely agree on is that Europe is, well, weakening. But why is it weakening? That's where things get really interesting, because their answers couldn't be more different. Let's start with President Trump's view. You see, for Trump, this is all about the nuts and bolts. It's tangible. He points his finger at what he calls the Green New Scam and says these policies have wrecked Europe's energy, which then hurts the economy, and ultimately leaves them with a weaker military. It's like a domino effect, right? One thing falls, and it takes the rest down with it. And he doesn't just say this. He brings receipts. He points to these numbers. Huge drops in energy production in places like Germany and the UK. And at the same time, electricity prices are just soaring. For him, this isn't some philosophical debate. It's just cold, hard numbers on a spreadsheet. In his eyes, Europe is failing the performance review. But then you have Vice President Vance, and he looks at the exact same situation and sees something totally different. For him, the problem isn't physical, it's a kind of ideological sickness. He says the biggest threat isn't coming from Russia or China, it's the threat from within. He's not looking at power grids, he's looking at what he sees as a crisis of spirit. And he's got a whole list of examples to back this up. Courts throwing out election results, government officials talking about censoring social media, even police raids over comments or people being arrested for praying silently. So his point is, if a continent is busy doing all of this, how can it possibly be a reliable partner? It doesn't matter how much it spends on its military. Okay, so we've got two pretty different diagnoses of the problem, right? One material, one ideological. So what's the cure? What's the prescription from an America First perspective? Well, President Trump's approach is, well, it's classic Trump. It's direct, it's transactional. He sees the alliance as a bad business deal for the United States. He says it flat out. We give so much and we get so little in return. For him, it's all about balancing the books. And his game plan is super straightforward. Step 1, demand payment. He's not just talking about the 2% defense spending target. Maybe it should be 5%. Step 2, use leverage. Put tariffs on things like wine and watches to get what you want on other issues. And step 3, the U.S. leads and our allies are expected to fall in line and chip in. Simple as that. Now, Vice President Vance also says Europe needs to step up, but he's coming at it from a different angle. For him, this isn't just about paying more money into a system. It's about Europe getting its act together and becoming truly self-reliant. That way, America can be freed up to focus on other big threats around the globe. And this is where he really gets to the heart of his argument. He's basically asking Europe a soul-searching question. What are you even defending? How can you decide on a military budget if you're not even sure what your own core values are anymore? He's saying Europe needs to find its own purpose again before it can be a strong ally. All right, this is where it gets really fascinating. Let's talk about Greenland, because this is the one place where Trump's real estate mindset and Vance's critique of Europe just click together perfectly. So you might be asking yourself, Greenland? Really? Why is everyone suddenly talking about Greenland? It seems to have come out of nowhere, but for these two leaders, it's a huge deal. For Trump, it's simple. It's location, location, location. He looks at the map and sees this huge, unsecured piece of land sitting in a super critical spot, right between the US, Russia, and China. From his point of view, controlling it is a core national security interest. End of story. But for Vance, Greenland is basically Exhibit A for his whole argument about European weakness. He says Denmark, a European ally, hasn't done its job in keeping Greenland secure.
And that has created a vacuum, a dangerous opening, that rivals like China and Russia would love to exploit. And here's the kicker. They both end up in the exact same spot, that the US needs to step in and secure Greenland. But they took completely different roads to get there. For Trump, it's a strategic necessity, a real estate move. For Vance, it's the result of an ally's failure. It's the perfect marriage of their two worldviews. So what happens when you put all this together? What does it all mean? Well, it looks like we're heading towards a fundamental rewrite of the whole transatlantic relationship, moving far away from the alliance we've known for the last 70 years. You could almost call this the Trump-Vance doctrine. And what it says is this: alliances are now transactional partnerships. American support is no longer guaranteed, it's conditional. It depends on allies proving two things: that they can pull their own weight with their military and their energy, and that they're ideologically on the same page when it comes to Western values. So if you're a European ally, what are the new rules of the game? Well, first, paying your fair share is non-negotiable, period. Second, America's security interests are number one, which means things like Greenland are now in play. Third, being weak on energy or your economy isn't just your problem, it's a security risk to the whole alliance. And maybe the biggest change of all, your country's internal values are now part of the discussion. Shared history just isn't enough anymore. And all of this leaves us with one massive, lingering question. This new approach puts everything up for grabs: defense spending, trade, even a country's internal culture. So what happens to an alliance when literally everything is on the table? What does that future look like?